You better spell check, you better proofread, you better take all the anxiety pills you'll need. Editors are coming for your draft. They're taking down notes, they're marking down stuff, gonna trim down all the fat and the fluff. Editors are coming for your draft. They see all of your typos, they notice all your flaws. They know what sells and what does not, so finding them is a lost cause. Hey, you better spell check, you better proofread, you better take all the anxiety pills you need. Editors are coming for your draft. Happy holidays from the Writ, everyone. Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ, the show where... Oh, dang, I usually plan these things. I'm looking really bad in front of our temporary co-host here.
Hello, my name is Alan Brooks. I'm subbing for...
Hey, what are you doing introducing yourself here? You don't know how the show works. I have to introduce you, or I have to start first. You've ruined it!
Whatever.
Okay, fine, whatever. What was I gonna say? Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ, the show where one of our co-hosts has either technical issues, or health issues, or...
time issues.
Or mental issues. No, that's mean. Morality issues. And so he's gone for the month. I don't
Morality issues?
Yeah, he kills people. You know that? David's a mass murderer.
You can't see it, but I'm rubbing my nose right now.
Just to be warned, listeners, this guy doesn't have the great big infectious laugh that Matt David has. So
his booming laugh. I feel sorry.
I'll just edit that in every time I make a joke that I think is hilarious and you don't laugh at. So
I kind of pity those people who listen to the podcast whenever Matt laughs, because I feel like it's going to blow out their eardrums.
But people love it, though. A lot of people say it's their favorite part of the show.
It's definitely one of my favorite parts of being friends with these two.
Oh yeah, well, like I liken it to a laugh track of a sitcom, because his laugh helps a lot with my jokes, because my jokes aren't really that funny, but for him to laugh all boisterously at it, it makes other people laugh at my humor. So
Matt has a very easily stimulated sense of humor.
Oh yeah. So like the laugh track audience of a sitcom, you just press a button and then ho 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 ho. Like, oh no, the in-laws are coming in. Ho 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 ho. Anyways. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Except he can actually tell you whether your joke is really, really stupid or not.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I haven't introduced you yet. Who are you?
My name is Alan Brooks. I've been friends with these two goofs since sophomore year of high school. Mm-hmm. It's been really fun.
You've been there throughout many of my stories and a few of
Matt
David's.
Yeah.
You call him Matt Seifert. In case you don't know, listeners, that's actually his real last name. My real last name is Hall, but we go by our middle names here because I decided to go for my middle name for my book, MEGAZOIC. Buy on Amazon.com. This is the part where we go cheap plug, Helen.
Cheap plug.
Yeah. Well, I love your enthusiasm. All right. So originally we were going by your middle name, but then I remembered your middle name is Clinton.
Yeah.
And my middle name is Donald, and based off of current politics, especially last year's, I wouldn't want to be the Donald out of Donald and Clinton, if you know what I'm saying. So you're just Alan.
Yeah, probably better to go that way. Okay. Plus, we don't have the problem of having two Matts.
Exactly.
To tell the difference between.
Yeah, exactly. Matt is an epidemic. Like we're everywhere.
Yeah.
I've said before, though, the nice thing I like about there being a lot of different Matts is that it's impossible to stereotype a Matt. You know, you ever hear a name and like you kind of picture like a certain personality go with that name. I can't really think of an example off the top of my head. But Matt, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Because Matt, there's fat Matts, there's thin Matts, there's nice Matts, there's rude Matts, there's nerd Matts, there's jock Matts.
Yeah. A very common name, which makes it, basically impossible to stereotype.
Yep.
Which is awesome, because...
Right.
Yeah. You can be your Matt.
Yep. And which one of the Matts of the podcast is your Matt? Probably Matt David, because you met him first.
Only a little bit. That was mostly because you were homeschooled, and both me and Matt.
I was homeschooled. Sorry, taking a drink there. All right, so what makes you qualified to be on the podcast other than the fact that Matt David is gone?
Well, yes, Matt David is gone.
For the month.
Yeah. For the
Or
month.
forever, depending on if you're really good at this job.
Yeah. Mostly because Matt David is gone because, he's in Japan. Of course, this has come up several times It's near the holidays. He's part of many, 3 different musical groups. Mm-hmm. And, of course, December is the big month of performances.
Even in Japan.
So he's been busy, crazy. Yeah. Crazy busy.
It's about as eloquent as the rest of us on this podcast, so don't worry.
Of course. And then he of course, was overworking himself because he's always super busy. And he's gotten sick. It is so sad that I am entirely unsurprised.
Yeah, no, he works himself a lot. He's a hard worker. Too much of a hard worker. I remember when I was in college with him, this is when swine flu was going around in the freshman year. He wanted to go to class and his stuff because he felt bad not going. I'm like, dude, you have freaking swine flu. They'll understand that you can't go. I managed to avoid swine flu. I don't know how.
Luck of the genetic draw.
Well, it was more like I avoided him as much as I could. I even slept down in the break room of the dorm. I later found out that was not allowed, but no one knew until I told them. So
no one knew, and especially if you said, "Oh, my roommate has swine flu, and I really would like not to get sick."
Right, and I did that early on when he got it, so when the disease would probably start traveling. But what makes you specifically qualified, rather than you just what do you like as writing? I don't know if you guys can hear a dog out there, listeners.
Yeah.
They're like, let me shut the door here.
But yeah, one of the things of course, I was writing several years before I actually met either of the Matts, and meeting them actually, I can't really say accelerated, but increased the quality and my understanding of writing as a whole.
We are pretty professional at this podcast.
They were better than me, at least.
We are better than you. Were, yeah, you're about the same.
Yeah, we're about the same now. But yeah, and that started since then, a lifelong pursuit of being a better writer. In fact, I found a website where it frequently tells us, you can tell us how to write better, and I've been...
Is it talking about Springhole or TV
Springhole.
Yeah, like I mentioned Springhole.
TV Tropes is more for fun and looking at the interesting / goofy / awesome that occur in fiction.
I don't know if you've heard our episode 12 of the Writ, Mary Sue's and how to avoid writing them.
Oh boy.
We mentioned the Mary Sue test on Springhole. That's our main basis for talking about it. So
well, I think it was actually a link to another website with the Mary Sue test.
Maybe, I don't know.
You can find it on Springhole, but it's actually to another location.
You did more research than we did. Nice. Okay.
I spend more time on Springhole. But yeah. So I've been very good on that. Another thing is, which our topic today, would you like to introduce that?
Well, actually, no, we're going to talk about our first segments first.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Right, of course, that's okay. You're the first ever guest host of the Writ, so, it's okay. I need to explain this, so be it. Okay, so first we're going to talk about our usual segment, what we at the Writ will rip off from this month.
Ooh.
You know what this basically means, right? Like, you're a listener, sort of. No, get out of here! You're not. Well, only hardcore fans allowed. There's the door. Nah, it's fine.
Nah.
Yeah, he listens. What? So you basically we talk about what we like or from a certain sort of work or what we don't like. Or
okay.
Well, not like what we don't like. More like just what we like for a certain thing and how we might incorporate something like that into our own works.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm gonna do. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I'll probably go first. That way you can sort of see how it all works.
Mm-hmm.
I just got this from the library today, and I've been looking through it because I had no other better material to talk about what I'm going to rip off of. But this is completely different from one of the things that I would rip off. I got 101 great warships. It's like submarines, battleships, and aircraft carriers, dreadnoughts, destroyers, basically all sorts of naval ships in history. And one of the reasons why I got this, it's a nonfiction book and has all these different descriptions of various things about it, but one of the reasons I got it was so I could get a better understanding of these kind of weapons for my own sci-fi series, MEGAZOIC, because one of the other sci-fi ones I might want to write, because even though it's a book about dinosaurs with laser guns, as I often like to so eloquently simplify it, but I tried to sort of go for the fact that some of this technology might work. Of course, you were reading some of the second one earlier, and you were saying that some of the technobabble I do is total nonsense. But,
total nonsense.
But, you helped me through it, and that's fine. But, sometimes, in terms of, the caliber of weapons and, how it all kind of works and, the technology and such, especially for, the current dinosaur civilization in it, I tried to make it semi-realistic. Not, modern, but, what I always say, and I've said this before in the show, it's what humans might look like. This freaking dog! there's a solar light outside in our front yard, and I think they think it's like headlight listeners. So if you can hear that, you might not be able to hear it at all. I don't know. If you can't hear it at all, edit in dog barks. But what was I saying? So it's like what human technology might be in the 22nd century or so. Is kind of what I go for the dinosaurs.
So about 2 decades from now.
Yeah, well, maybe not 2 decades,
centuries.
2 centuries or 1 century, like
1 to 2 centuries.
Yeah, like nothing too crazy. But then again, also they have laser force fields and laser guns, like I often say. So, of course, we might have laser guns in the future. We ever have some sort of point and click point. I don't know what I'm trying to say. What am I trying to say?
I have no idea. Point and click.
Point and click adventure games like Monkey Island. We have those, and they require laser guns, don't they, to work? His face, listeners. Okay. So, I'm just basically reading a bit of nonfiction to try and incorporate some of the terminology and other sort of more sophisticated stuff about fighting in Raider books. Like, it looks like they have great fighters, great tanks, great bombers as well. If this is interesting enough, I can look for it in other things. So, what are you going to rip off from this month? Or ever, because this is your first episode.
Yeah. I was actually thinking of Andy Weir's The Martian out.
I mentioned this on episode 1 of our podcast, or episode 2. I don't remember which one. No cheap plug there, because I don't remember which one. Sorry, go on.
Essentially the idea, now this is, spoiler alert, this is going to be talked about a lot more in this current podcast.
Oh yeah.
But note something interesting about The Martian. There is absolutely no antagonist.
No, I like that.
There is no antagonist. There is no evil bad guy out to get him. It is, quite frankly, a battle of man versus nature.
Of Mars. Martian.
Of Mars, yeah.
And also
as well as
space.
There's a little bit of politics, but the politics is mostly ignored.
Yeah, like, there's a little bit of politics about, well, this is reasonable, but everyone wants to ensure that this guy, Mark Watney, gets home. So.
Yeah, there's no bad guy in it. And the way that Andy Weir did this was through hard sci-fi. Now, literally there is only one scientific thing in that entire book that is inaccurate. And the rest of it is 100% accurate.
Are you talking about the storm at the beginning that traps him?
Because the problem is the atmosphere on Mars is less than 1% the density of ours. So if it wanted to be strong enough to blow over a several hundred metric ton spaceship, it would have to be somewhere around probably around over 1,000 miles an hour of wind speeds.
Right. I think that really adds credibility to all of it. The only thing that's unrealistic is the thing that gets him into the situation to begin with. If it was anything that got him out of the situation that was unrealistic, it would ruin the whole credibility of it.
Oh yeah.
But just the fact that the only thing that's unrealistic is how he gets into the situation. That I think that's more forgivable. In my opinion.
I can agree with you on that.
So yeah.
But other than that, everything in the book is totally realistic. The ship that they use, the fact that they use the idea of Delta V, which, again, will come up later.
I have no idea what that is, so it must be pretty advanced.
Not if you're a rocketry nerd like me.
That's okay.
But yeah, and they just use everything realistic, so...
In fact, I've actually heard people think that's based on a true story. It's so realistic. I'm like, we haven't been to Mars yet. Like, humans have not been to Mars yet. You think that would have tipped you off? Maybe they didn't know that, but it does such a. But point is, it does such a good job. It is
a bit of a facepalm for the human race that
it's only a few people I know. Of course, these are only a few people that I know personally. Who knows how many people throughout humanity have thought that? But that's to be given a point of credit to the book itself. It's done its job so well that some people think that's based off a true story. So
could very well be, and it's especially another testament to kind of the unifying power of a crisis that we're somewhat disconnected from.
Right.
Because you notice, like we said, everyone on Earth does at least something to get
this one guy
back from Mars.
Right. Like, my older sister doesn't think it's realistic that they'd spend all this time, all this energy, all this money to save one person. Like, in terms of science, it might just be better to let him die. And I'm like, I know, but I know moralities, but like...
Yeah, that's purely from a scientific standpoint.
Yeah, because like, it would have cost billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe even tens of billions or hundreds of billions, based on like how to turn the ship back, launching the things, and like all this time, all this energy to just get one guy.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of, like, she also argued that the scientist himself, like Mark Watney, might be okay with it. Just for science. Like, I don't know. Like, they'd have, like, you're not just gonna leave him there scared.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, he would have to be okay with it. Like, for science, I make this sacrifice.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I don't get it either, but that's just my sister's point. I don't know.
That kind of torpedoes the whole story.
Yeah, no, it does. That's why I end up telling her, like, yeah, that maybe for a scientific standpoint that makes sense, but from a narrative standpoint, like, no, we have to save him.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Well, that's a good rip-off thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, in terms of our next segment of the show, so this is what we always do. And
what we've written?
What we at the Writ Twit have writ is how we word it. It always throws Matt David off whenever he's like, what we at the Writ... He's gotten better about it, though. As have I.
Notice, better, not good.
No one's ever good. We always say that we're better than you. We never say we're good. Like, no writer is good. Wait, I don't know. What am I saying?
I don't know, you went on a tangent.
I'm a man of tangents. At least I'm not a man of cosines, right? His face once again, listeners. That's one of my trademark groan-worthy puns. Matt David's gonna be proud. Hope you're listening. Anyways.
Oh boy.
So, what have I writ? Just basically the third Megazoic book.
Mm-hmm. Very focused. Very good.
Yeah, very focused. I am pretty focused on it, I'd like to say. Trying to think.
You also did the AE thing?
Oh yeah, but I talked about that in earlier episodes as well.
Right, okay.
The Kavorian prequel. I haven't done that lately, though.
I read that.
What I guess I could mention this. What I've ripped off. I'm not ripped off. What I've writ. One way to kind of help my creativity, and also be kind of a fun project. I've written plans for Megazoic as if it was like a MOBA game, like which is like Heroes of the Storm, which is I like to play, but also like the big one is League of Legends and Dota 2 and Smite. And Heroes of the Storm are the 4 big ones. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to like imagine all these different characters, how they would work in this MOBA. Like, it's kind of fun for my creativity, but also like kind of helps me sort of plan characters in the future. Like, there's characters in the third book that I put into this MOBA before I've actually started writing them. So it's kind of fun. It's a fun way for me to do it. Plus, like, I really like that genre, so it'd be kind of cool. Like, what would their abilities be? What would their ultimates be? How would they work in terms of gameplay? Especially some of them, like Cortan, for instance, the main character. He doesn't really fight. So how would he work? And it's kind of fun to do that. He's a support character, by the way. He focuses on like shielding and healing, repairing some things, hacking certain structures so they fire on the enemies. I don't know, I thought it was kind of fun. And I also have like quotes that they say to each other, especially if they kill one another, which is always kind of amusing.
Yep.
If a player playing as Cortan kills a player playing as Bellar, Cortan says, "Dang it, Bellar! Sorry, I have no idea what I'm doing." Yeah, kind of funny. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. It's kind of fun. I don't know. Anything to say about that? Usually we kind of like to comment on each other's.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually fun to listen to him tell me about these ideas. Some of the lines are actually quite amusing, especially considering the character interactions it reveals and kind of the fun little pithy one-liners you can add to stuff to basically add that you can't really have in the
story itself.
In the story itself, because it would kind of...
If you guys can hear clicking, that's because I'm looking at the Megazoic MOBA document here, so we can see if But, oh, right! Actually, no, I probably shouldn't say that, because the second book isn't out yet.
Yeah.
Dang it! Some of this is from the second book, and there's kind of fun stuff there.
There's probably some stuff from the third book as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I was saying, there's some of these characters are from the third book, and I've written before. Sorry. Oh, here's something interesting. So, in the book, I was just telling him this to Alan earlier.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So, the chapter 17? Yeah, I think it's 17. It's the chapter that's called The Killing of the Cortex in Megazoic. My illustrator, she did a picture of a character. Each chapter has a character, and some of them are more minor than others. Like, this one's literally just a creaturesaurus who has, like, 2 lines of dialogue and is killed immediately. But I didn't have anyone else in that chapter who didn't already have another chapter with their picture on it, so I just picked him. And because of her illustration of this character, this little creaturesaurus armory worker, I ended up really enjoying it. She gave him a little hat. She gave him like a little... The harness. Way she harnessed to hold his crates, it looked like just a little worker just trying his best to do his job. And I don't know, I really liked it. I found it very endearing. So I ended up putting this character... I gave him a name, I gave him a backstory, and I put him in this MOBA. He's also a support. So like, since he has this crate... that he's carrying, and in his whole part of the story is delivering this crate of supplies to Olajex. One of his abilities is literally just him calling in supplies, which heals allies who walk over it. So I incorporated that into his thing. And I thought it was kind of fun, and like how he's like, work, what a life this job is. And then nobody said this job was safe is when he attacks. And then he's just very focused on like his work. He's just a hard little worker. He says, in one of his kill quotes, if he kills Cortan, we should hang out sometime. Or if he kills Dranax, literally his prince in the story is like, well, I just committed high treason. So,
lots of fun little personality quirks you can
add.
add.
Like, I thought that was kind of fun. Anyways, so that's what I've writ. What have you writ?
I'm currently working on... Well, I kind of had a sad incident. My entire hard drive with all my creative work kind of got destroyed.
I remember this. This was so sad.
Yeah. So I'm currently having to rebuild everything from the ground up. So I started writing a book with a very, 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 very work in progress title called Swords of Victory or something like that. Anyway, it's basically a D&D-esque fantasy world,
Right.
with a superhero character thrown in and and it's just kind of an exploration of a character I plan to make almost a series of anthologies about.
That sounds really fun. There's a lot of times where it kind of aligns, like fantasy and superheroes kind of align more often than you think, because the first superheroes were in fantasy stories like Beowulf and Hercules and I don't know, Hippolyta. That's
Hippolyta and Odysseus?
Odysseus,
yes.
Yeah, like they're all basically superheroes.
Achilles.
A lot of
basically superheroes.
A lot of them are literally divine parentage, so they actually have super strength and such. And Perseus often has the Medusa head with him, so he can turn one of his powers, even though it's not really his power, but he's using it, is to turn people to stone. So, and he's also the son of Zeus. So,
yep,
yeah,
one of the few Greek heroes that actually does it. But this is a little more of a classical superhero, someone with kind of enhanced abilities, and it's got a lot of interesting things that I'm planning. I'm trying to focus on a character who is kind of if you were to have this character in your party, you'd think the character was kind of useless or not super important.
You mean party as in like a fantasy party?
Yeah,
fantasy for some reason in my head I immediately went to if this person was in the party, she would just be hiding in the background while everyone else was dancing.
That would actually be another way to put it.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
In a fantasy party, she would be the somewhat useless one who
every now and then would just do something ridiculous.
Some use, basically.
So, speaking of roles, what would she be? So it's like Cortan's a support. Is she a red mage? No, clearly not, based on that.
No.
The gimmick character. Every now and then she just does an insane ability, but just once. I don't know.
Well, it's more like I don't know. I just didn't want to focus on some of the heroic characters, so we can kind of distance ourselves from them and sort of relate to the people who have social issues.
Oh yeah.
In real life,
social issues. What are those? I'm the most confident. The fact that I can't continue this sentence completely negates my
Yes, you totally lost all credibility. But whatever.
I'm not confident at all.
You're confident enough.
Oh, well, moving on. That we're gonna rate, or is there anything else you wanted to say?
That's all I want to say.
All right, cool. So we should go into the topic. Wow, look at this. You and I are much more efficient than me and Matt David about getting all this stuff done. We like to ramble, him and I.
Yes. In fact, it's mostly whenever we try and talk about something, the three of us together, it's mostly
You're the third wheel, basically.
No, I'm not the third wheel. I'm the guy it's my self-appointed job to bring us back on subject.
You could be the third wheel in a tricycle. So therefore, you're the one who has to keep getting the two back wheels.
Yes, I'm the steering wheel.
Yeah, they're the steering wheel, the one who's controlling it all. You're the front wheel of the tricycle.
Yep.
Trying to make sure that we don't go too much off track.
I'm seeing an irony here. Yeah. Aren't the front wheels usually bigger on a tricycle?
Yeah.
I'm the smallest of the three.
No, you're not. You're enormous. You're big and fat. This works because it's podcast. It's audio format. Look at you. Look at the room shake as you enter this room, you 600-pound man, you. Nah, he's a twig, guys. So, it's okay. He's a good twig.
Yeah. Smart twig.
He is a smart twig. I'd hope you're smart if you're a twig. Yeah. You don't have brawn, so you have brains. To be fair, I don't have brawn either. I mean, I may be big, but I've got no muscle whatsoever.
He's a big teddy bear.
That's what I strive for. Anyways, topic for this month, I always do that. The topic for this month is hard sci-fi. So in case you don't know...
My speciality.
Oh, that's why you're here. I mean, when you were on I want to make sure this was a topic that you could help talk about. So... let's explain a little bit what hard sci-fi is. We talked about a little about this in the first episode of the Writ, the very first one, in terms of which is more about fantasy, but we mentioned hard sci-fi versus soft sci-fi. But I can explain again a little bit here. Hard sci-fi is basically sci-fi that's really realistic, really realistic. Obviously, sci-fi requires a little bit of sort of speculation,
flexibility.
Yeah, and speculation of what could happen in the future. But a hard sci-fi is very hard and fast. The laws of physics that we know them right now are still unable to be broken.
Yeah.
And Yeah, the technology might be a little bit more advanced, but it's nothing beyond what we couldn't probably do in a couple of decades.
And it's a good thing to note that it's not two categories of hard sci-fi, soft sci-fi.
No, it's definitely a spectrum.
It's definitely a spectrum. And you can have something that's, for instance, the one my ripoff thing was The Martian. That is what you would call super, super hard sci-fi.
Again, except for the storm, but to be fair, that's a very minor part of the story, even though it's all...
Well, not a minor part of the story, but it's a very... it's a very minor
It doesn't
point.
really matter, But, the hardest sci-fi of all is just real life.
Yeah.
That's not even really sci-fi then. It's just...
Science reality.
It's just reality, or science reality, too, because there's reality in science. Unlike what my homeschooling taught me, am I right? Sorry. Again, his face, guys. Yeah. I'm going to keep describing his face because instead of laughing like Mike David does, he just rolls his eyes. So, I'll let you know when he rolls his eyes. Anyways, what was I going to say? So, soft sci-fi is more like... Okay.
Star Wars.
Well, actually, that's more fantasy. Soft sci-fi is more like Star... Oh, I got a text. Who is this?
Anyway, so soft sci-fi
more
would
like
be...
Star Trek.
Star Trek. It's like, it's all science fiction, but...
There's phasers,
they kind of play hard and loose with some ideas.
Okay, I think we're
what is it with the evenings and you getting popular?
I'm a published author, man. It's actually my illustrator. She's got me certain things. Well, I'll look at it later. Sorry, illustrator. All right, so... Yeah, Star Trek, it's still sci-fi, there's still Earth and it's still in the future.
I call it moderately hard sci-fi.
Star Trek?
I haven't actually seen it.
Wow, you haven't seen it? Oh my gosh, Monstron is going to kill you! The other guy.
I've seen a little bit.
It's pretty soft.
It's probably
there's phasers, there's warping. I don't know, I'm trying to think of Okay, here's a way to describe it. Let's talk about time travel. Mm-hmm. Hardest sci-fi of all says time travel's impossible. Except for maybe some wormhole stuff that we don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works.
Stuff that you have to know a lot of math to do to talk.
Right. Slightly softer, but still pretty hard sci-fi. You'd be like, well, here's how you do time travel, blah, 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 blah. And it goes in this long, detailed sort of thing of how we could theoretically do it. That's still pretty hard, but since it involves time travel, it's still a little bit softer.
Yeah.
Soft sci-fi is basically you just press the button here, and then boom, you're time traveling. That's soft sci-fi. No explanation. It just, you press the time travel button.
But Doctor Who is very much soft sci-fi
when it
comes to time travel.
Well, it's also... Doctor Who is just a little bit of everything. There's, historical stuff. There's fantasy stuff. Mm-hmm. It's mainly sci-fi as a whole, but it's really soft sci-fi, yeah. It's just more like just a bit of everything. It's more like just a big British adventure. Very British. The Whovians and the like.
Yeah.
I know some good Whovians.
Mm-hmm.
I know some bad Whovians. That's not true. All the Whovians I know are good.
Okay, good.
Anyways, so that's basically what hard sci-fi is. Examples I can think of are recently Interstellar, and of course you said The Martian. 2001: A Space Odyssey was very hard for the time. I'm not sure if it still holds up.
I think it still holds up.
Okay. Other than the Star Child sort of thing and the
monoliths.
and...
the part where everything just kind of goes down the rabbit hole and it doesn't come out until...
But to be fair, that's like Aliens or whatever. It's
that is one
the human stuff is very hard. That's kind of mentioned before. I recently showed him James Cameron's Avatar. Well, recently, I mean last year or the year before or something. I don't know. But
as far as the humans go, they are very realistic. In fact, I'll get to this later, but props for the humans for actually having radiators on their ship.
No, their ship is very well designed for interstellar travel. It looks a lot like what an interstellar ship would look like, So yeah, even though the stuff with the Na'vi and all that other kind of stuff and the weird, the fantasy star world it's in, it renders the movie as a whole slightly softer sci-fi, but probably still on the hard side just because of all the human stuff. It's a good balance, is what I'm saying.
Softening just to get the story to move.
Right, exactly. But the human stuff is very hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, so what do you want to talk about in terms of?
Well,
I guess
I've got a couple of things I want to talk about first, but here's some basic things. With hard sci-fi, or at least hard-ish sci-fi, they apply in two ways. One, they apply in world building, which you guys talked about. Mm-hmm. Just the idea of you kind of create the facts of your story.
Right.
And it also applies kind of the plotting, because if your hard sci-fi says, I can't do this plot point without doing this plot point, well, that's something you can try and figure out either a way around, or it's a hard and fast rule, and you're going to have to figure out a way to not do it that way.
Right.
So there's a couple of things I want to say. One is with sci-fi, softer sci-fi.
He's going to get his notes, by the way. If his voice seems more distant, he's got a bunch of notes here. He's way more sophisticated than we are. Okay?
Yes. So there's three things I want to talk about. One, do your research. Hard sci-fi involves, unfortunately, a lot of research, a lot of looking into the know of basically how things actually are, the rules of physics as we know it, the rules of technology as we know it,
Right.
biology, stuff like that.
Right. Well, like what I would say to that is like it's kind of like, I mean, I'm not really as much about hard sci-fi, but this applies the same way as well in terms of like the whole point of sci-fi like this is showing that you're taking yourself seriously. Right. So in order to show that you're worth being taken seriously, you should do your research. That's why, in terms of like this is different, but sort of the same sort of thing. I like to write stories with the more humorous sort of feel to it, make it more fun. I don't take myself too seriously. Sometimes I do, but like when I do, the way I do it more, a lot of times that's when you know the story's serious. But because that I don't take my story too seriously, and there's a lot of fun to it, I can get away with having dinosaurs with laser guns. Like, it's a ridiculous concept. Of course it is. So I have fun with it. So that's kind of what I'd like to bring there. In a similar manner, if your sci-fi is totally upfront with the fact that it involves blaster guns and like interstellar travel, like all this stuff with raccoons and trees, Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know, that kind of stuff, it doesn't take itself seriously at all. So we can forgive any sci-fi.
To say that a science fiction thing is not hard is not an insult,
right? Unless it's
just
trying to be hard and it's not. Unless it's failing.
That's
like so, but like so like Guardians of the Galaxy, it has numerous issues with sci-fi, but who cares? There's a raccoon that shoots a gun in it that talks.
There's a snarky raccoon with guns. Yeah,
but like conversely, if something like Interstellar got stuff completely wrong, but it was trying really hard to make it right, then we'd be like, torches and pitchforks to Christopher Nolan's place. Oh, sorry, go on.
So yeah, the second one is this applies to any kind of world building as usual, but be consistent. Be consistent.
Right.
Be consistent with the rules of your world building, with the rules of what you have set out as the rules of your story. Be consistent. Okay?
Right. On this,
maybe that's a little too broad, but this is a general rule of writing.
Well, especially
consistent.
with hard sci-fi, that those rules are usually our rules. Like that's also applicable to like fantasy as well. Like people can accept whatever as long as you're consistent with it. Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example.
It actually applies very well to fantasy.
Well,
better in fantasy than sci-fi, because sci-fi you can go look up the facts in the book, whereas fantasy you kind of have to come up with them on your own most of the time.
Right, exactly. Like Superman is vulnerable to kryptonite.
Yeah, it's something they've written in, and that is
right. That's just how it is. So if suddenly someone throws in kryptonite, he's like, "Oh, I've overcome that." It's like I won't work anymore. People would not buy it. Like that you've broken your own rule. So the rule of him being vulnerable to kryptonite is ridiculous. It doesn't make. I don't know exactly how it works. I mean, radioactive sort of. I don't know. It doesn't really. The point is that's how it is. So stick with it, and we'll accept it.
Yeah.
So same thing with with this.
And the third one is unintended consequences.
Oh no!
This is a fun fact of you actually, if you think real hard about your story, you may find unintended consequences to laws and rules you've come up with.
Right.
Like I can't come up with any of them. Basically,
what in terms of? Are you talking about like world building or like?
In terms of world building, like say you come up with this. Sometimes favorite thing for spaceships is reactionless drives, which means you don't have to haul around fuel. You can just drive around. Well, that has a nasty little unintended consequence of one, energy becomes practically infinitely free because you have this thing that you create thrust out of just energy frequently. And it goes faster and faster.
I'm really bad with energy, I gotta say. Like I use the word energy constantly. I mean, I don't know what, but like you probably read my stuff like, oh, what is this energy fetish that he has? But I don't know. Like I said though, like I show people I don't really take the story itself too seriously. It's more about the plot and the characters and the action more than the science.
Yeah.
So
another one about the reactionless drive is, well, if someone has a reactor and a small ship and the engine, well, there's a weapon called relativistic weapons. You get something going a large fraction of the speed of light, and you could crack a planet to bits.
It doesn't even matter what it is.
With the equivalent of a naval rowboat, and it just, any kind of big structured idea of how space battles go just falls down the toilet with reaction drive.
Well, yeah. Or like just in terms of distance as well. Like, I love the opening battle to Revenge of the Sith, the last of the Star Wars prequels. I love that. It's so cool. However, it shows these spaceships firing at each other at point blank, kind of like naval ships do. It's space! What's the point? You can be as far away as you want. Yeah. You don't have to be so close. I mean, maybe the logic is that, well, if they're that, it doesn't matter how far away they are, they'll still possibly hit us. Even, I guess their thrusters can't move that fast. I don't know. But the point is, like, if you're closer, it allows you to be more focused. I don't know. know. But
the energy weapons are more intense. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. But point is, like, they didn't have to worry about that in terms of distance.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing you have to figure out. I don't know.
Now, another thing, like I said, a lot of these rules do not apply just to sci-fi. Just
Hard
to
sci-fi,
hard
right?
sci-fi.
Right, yeah.
Be consistent with everything. Be careful of unintended consequences with everything. Do some research. Okay.
That's the big part, I think, out of all this.
Yeah.
Make sure you get it correct. Like,
Because, if you don't take it too seriously, you can get away with not doing a bunch of research.
Right.
And just kind of be goofy about it.
Well,
Have fun.
another thing about my story, one thing I do a hell of a lot of research on, but it's because I'm really interested in this as well. Dinosaurs. Like, even though I didn't have to do research on dinosaurs, I do. Like, and I love dinosaurs so much I was going to do it anyways. But I try to make sure every character is a different species, and I try to make sure they're depicted semi-accurately. Now, of course, they're wielding guns. They often use their hands. Although a lot of times I make sure, like, if they can't use their hands, they use mental triggers.
Four-legged ones?
Yeah, like they use mental triggers. That I kind of imply that, like, the ones with hands and bigger brains have built for them. And I kind of sort of go into the fact that it's like a collaborative sort of intelligence that kind of built each other up. To, like, that's how you have so many different species who are all sapient and intelligent. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really make sense as to how. But
it doesn't really make sense. But again, this is...
Who cares? Like, when you see a T-Rex wielding a laser gun, is the first thing comes to your mind, how? I mean, it probably would be, actually.
Probably would.
But more like it'd be like, awesome!
If this is like the third book in there and a T-Rex is wielding a laser gun, then you're like, okay, cool. What's he going to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. That's more like, by the time the third book, well, that's the thing I'm worried about in terms of the second book coming out. I'm like, the first book has gotten, in terms of the people who have read it, unanimously positive reviews. Who's to say the second one will be like, oh, it's just more the same? I'm like, I'm sorry, but you can only be surprised by dinosaurs wielding laser guns once. Of course it's not going to feel as fresh.
Yeah.
Like...
But that's one thing I think that while I admit you don't have a lot of skill in hard sci-fi,
right? You
make up for it with rather marvelous character and plotting skills.
Well, thanks. But that's more my focus. If my focus was more hard sci-fi, then the book would be a failure because I don't do it enough. So like how I remember one time
in all things considered, a big tangent.
That's fine. Go ahead. This show's all about big tangents.
All big tangents. Those are the two biggest points of story writing. Okay, he's talked about Friends, where there isn't a lot of fancy world building. There isn't a lot of...
Oh, you're talking about the show Friends. That's what I was talking about. Friends. Yeah.
Then there's not a whole bunch of...
I mentioned that I just mentioned that in terms of like world building can be... There's some plot twists. It's more like, oh, these two characters kissed. What will people do? There's actually a lot of twists. Every season ends with a cliffhanger, actually, except for one.
Which is how much I know.
You don't watch Friends. Why would you watch Friends? But anyways, he brings us up though. Basically, I brought up the show Friends in the episode about world building because world building could be something as complicated as Tolkien and all the crazy languages and crazy hardcore like advanced histories. Like it's so much vast stuff. Or it could be something as simple as these two friends in the show Friends live in one apartment. These other two live in this other apartment right across the hall. Down below them is the coffee shop they all hang out with. That's all. That's world building. That's all it takes.
Yep.
So, and that's one of the most successful shows of all time. So, Big Bang Theory is now lasting longer in terms of seasons. Wow. People really don't like that show, though. But,
But, yeah.
I like that show. I think it's fine. I don't really like it recently.
As far as stories go, if you have good characters and good plotting, a lot of other things don't really matter.
I really like that that's what you're bringing up in this episode about hard sci-fi, that it really doesn't matter.
Well, it matters if you choose to, but...
Dog!
Yeah.
Want me to send you into space? Pull a Leica on you? There's a hard sci-fi reference. That's actually just a hard history reference.
Yeah, hard sci-fi science history lessons.
That poor dog.
Yeah.
I recently found out how she died. It's not good. At first I was like, oh, she just ran out of oxygen. No, that's the cover-up story.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Actually, that gets to my first point. I'm going to start about space travel because if there's anything science fiction usually gets wrong, it's space travel. And now I'm not going to go back directly into the whole thing that people crucify me for. Faster than light travel is currently impossible / it's impossible.
As far as we know it right now, it's impossible.
Yeah,
the thing about science is that it can constantly evolve. Like I've been watching the show Cosmos on Netflix with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He often specifies. He was talking about that with space light travel. He says nothing can go faster than the speed of light. Pause. That we currently know of. He's open to the fact that maybe science in the future could change. That's the thing about science, you know. They want you to prove them wrong. Thus far, though, all of our studies have shown that nothing can go faster than light. So, who knows in the future, but right now that's our understanding, yes.
Yeah. But kind of the idea with Laika, this is kind of a big issue that one of the second big issues that people get wrong in sci-fi is space is not cold. Space is a vacuum. Now, to give you a comparison, the human body and all living things are furnaces. We constantly produce heat, or at least the warm-blooded ones do.
Right.
The warm-blooded ones produce heat, and that heat gets stuck in this container that's surrounded by a vacuum. Now, to give you a terrestrial example, thermoses are that thing. They are something with something hot in the middle, surrounded by a vacuum. And that's precisely what happens in space, because heat travels via 3 ways: conduction, convection, and radiation.
I have no idea what any of those are except for radiation. So
conduction is touching a hot stove. Convection is
a hot stove touching you.
No, hot water circulating around. Hot water in a pot on the stove circulating around. Whereas radiation is you can feel the heat of the stove from several feet from a foot or so away.
Okay.
Conduction and convection don't work in space, which leaves you with the most inefficient way of getting rid of that heat radiation. Now,
which, without the other two, it takes a while, right?
Yeah, it's the least efficient.
Now, of course, if you're in the middle of the sun, of course you're going to die immediately. But that's because you're in the radiation, like you're at a place where convection and conduction work.
Touching.
But yeah, exactly. Like once you're close to the sun,
once you touch the sun,
not even maybe touching, but just being above it, slightly above it, like hundreds of miles even above it, you're still probably going to die without a suit, because even though you probably can't. I mean, there might be other things that kill you. The radiation would still kill you there.
Radiation may kill you, but mostly you just get cooked to death.
Yeah, exactly. But like
that is what I believe I've been read is what killed the dog Laika on Sputnik 2.
I think it was overheating. No, it wasn't Sputnik. I don't think that was a satellite.
I thought Laika was Sputnik 2, because the first one was Sputnik 1.
But there was no. Sputnik didn't have anything in it. It was just a probe.
Yeah, Sputnik 2, however, did have a dog.
You would know more than I would. Yeah. So,
and that's what happened. The cooling system shut down. And
I don't want to hear this. It was an innocent dog. I just brought that up just because the dog kept barking. Make it up. Say it was a cockroach. The cockroach Laika. How did the cockroach named Laika die?
She basically got cooked.
Fried cockroach.
No, more like oven cooked.
Yeah, so when they opened up the capsule, they saw this little bitty cockroach corpse. Then they promptly crunched it and ate it, because that's a good source of protein. That's totally what happened. Don't tell me nothing about dogs dying.
He has such a soft heart, doesn't he?
I love dogs. I don't want them to die.
So yeah, I remember how I talked about the Venture Star in Avatar. I had these big
that's what it's called,
panel things which to get rid of heat.
The
radiators are very much necessary for, especially with ships with nuclear reactors that produce huge amounts of power to get you someplace fast. Well, they also produce a lot of waste heat, which in Earth, conduction and convection and radiation will just kind of get rid of it. Whereas you're stuck with just radiation in space, so you have to have radiators. In fact, they in 2001: A Space Odyssey, there were plans to have radiators on the what they call
I have no idea what they call the ship.
On the ship, yeah. But they overruled it because
it's one of those classic movies I've never seen. Cool. Well, yeah, no,
yeah. And they overruled one of the big names in science fiction, who always wrote really hard sci-fi stuff.
Arthur C. Clarke, right?
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah.
There's also Heinlein.
Yeah, and then there's who's that other guy? Dick something.
I don't remember. I'll remember later, but yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke. Who are the big guys? Who wrote I, Robot? Oscar Isaac. No, Oscar Isaac's.
Asimov?
Isaac Asimov, yeah. Oscar Isaac is the guy who wrote The Importance of Being an Artist.
Isaac Asimov was another one of them. So yeah, they were all... Yeah.
Wait, no. Oscar Wilde is the guy who wrote The Importance of Being an Artist. Oscar Isaacs, I think, is an actor. He was in Star Wars, The Force Awakens.
Bleh.
Yeah, he was also in X-Men Apocalypse. He was Apocalypse. There was a lot of blue makeup on him. Okay, but... So that's my link to Oscar Isaacs, to Oscar Wilde, to Isaac Asimov.
Isaac Asimov, yeah.
Who we're talking about. Yeah, he did iRobot.
Robert A. Heinlein,
Asimov, and then Clarke.
Asimov and Clarke. 3 big early sci-fi writers.
And they're all very hard sci-fi.
Yeah. Another thing about it is, okay, if you're going towards a planet, for the love of Pete, don't fly towards it. Don't fly towards it.
But how are you going to get to it if you don't fly towards it? I don't understand as a dumb person who doesn't know sci-fi.
Gravity! It affects things way far outside. If you're going towards a planet and you are wanting to go there, you can just shut your engine off and let
so you're saying don't thruster towards
don't
it.
thrust
You
towards
don't.
it.
You don't literally mean like you fly another direction. Or I guess you
No.
could if you want to do a slower
don't-
descendant in like a spiral thing around it. But what's the
You
point of
still
that?
be thrust backwards. But yeah,
Yeah.
don't
I'll thrust
thrust
backwards. Oh,
towards
man, look
the
at this guy.
planet. Don't thrust towards the planet. I mean, one of the major problems that people are always scared about with going to space is how do you come back? Because even in low Earth orbit, you are traveling at over 7 kilometers per second. You want to see someone get roasted real quickly? Try putting 7 kilometers per second of speed. And that's not 7 kilometers per hour. That's 7 kilometers per second.
Yeah,
okay?
that's quite fast.
So even in the really high atmosphere, that's enough friction.
These dogs keep barking! Sorry.
That's enough friction to literally incinerate you. Turn you into little ash particles. And I mean, that's why people slow down. That's why they retro thrust towards planets, so they slow down. That's why they have heat shields.
Right.
That's why... not Challenger. Who's the one? One of the space shuttles. That's why one of the space shuttles...
Challenger blew up on launch. Columbia blew up on re-entry.
Columbia blew up on re-entry. Okay?
Yeah.
You're dealing with super hot plasmas that could probably initiate nuclear fusion because of how hot it is.
Right.
But yeah.
So yeah, don't thrust towards it. And also, speaking of thrusters, a lot of people don't seem to get this. You don't need to constantly have the thrusters on.
Oh, no.
Like,
they showed that correctly in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah, like, because there's no friction in
Hosting.
space. Yeah, just
There's
turn...
no
once you
friction in
reach the
space.
maximum speed, just turn them off.
Yeah, what you need
Like-
your desired speed.
Yeah, like...
That's where delta V comes from. Delta is a scientific name for change. V is for velocity.
Right.
In space, it is not so much range as it is change in velocity.
Right, so that also means, conversely, you need to have thrusters on the other end so you can slow down.
Or flip around. That's what
Or,
they
like, you
often
flip
do.
the thrust...
Yeah,
Yeah, so, like...
you basically... Because you can point any direction in space. You can go belly first, you can go butt first, you can go head first. Any direction works when it comes to flying in
Because
space.
there's really no directions in space.
There's really no directions in space.
There's no up, down...
That's something that Ender's Game. That's what they get correctly in Ender's Game.
Right.
In the book, especially. In the movie, not so much.
I've never seen the movie, but I've heard it's
in the book, it talks about how the students would literally jump into this place and continue thinking the way they jumped was down. When you're in space, there is no up, there is no down.
Right.
It's a three-dimensional world.
Right.
Space is probably the closest we can get to actually experiencing what it would be like to live in an ocean.
Right.
Because
I mean,
and even then, there's still a down in the ocean. But in
Well,
space,
yeah,
there is no... But there's 3 dimensions to move in.
Well, he's talking about like more like a fish. Like if we were just a fish. Not like if we were on undersea colony, which of course there's still an up and down.
There's still an up and down.
Yeah, but if we were
you're
just a fish swimming about in the open ocean, that's what would be kind of be like.
There's 3 dimensions of movement, whereas we're normally dealing with 2.
Right. Exactly.
And that's another thing. Because there's 3 dimensions of movement, and spaces and distance in spaces are, well, pardon the really terrible pun, but astronomically huge.
Oh, well, I think that's the reason where the term astronomically comes from, because it's so huge.
It is massively huge. So this whole idea of having collisions in space...
Well, that's nothing. Like
I guess really hard. You have to actually aim for the person.
Right. Well, like that's the thing when like we could talk about like common sci-fi like mistakes in terms of like trying to make hard sci-fi, and some of these are like more forgettable other things. But one thing about asteroid fields are incredibly easy to go through. Don't let movies fool you. Now I know in Empire Strikes Back that was a fictional asteroid field, but even the way it was filmed, in reality that would be a bunch of dust very quickly with the way they were all crashing into each other. I know it's a galaxy far, far away, but I don't know. But like,
it's because it was cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And again, that's fine. Star Wars. Who cares? That's not the point. Again, so there's literally a worm in one of them. So a space worm.
Space worm.
But so what was I gonna say? So yeah, like people like. We can fly through them all the time. That's how Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, they flew right through it, no problems.
Everything that goes past, like, Cassini went through, which
like,
died.
No problems.
Yeah.
Because
anything going past the asteroid belt usually has a fairly easy time.
Because they're hundreds of miles apart from each other. More often.
The distance between most asteroids and the asteroid belt is about 6 times the difference between Earth and the Moon. Since they're a lot smaller... Usually you wouldn't be able to spot an asteroid from another asteroid unless you had like...
Right. Like a lot of people kind of envision like, oh my gosh, there's just this big field around the sun. Like, no. Like, if you combine all the asteroids in the asteroid field together, isn't it still like just a quarter the size of the moon? Or something like that?
Something really small, yeah.
And again, think of how big the distance is. Like, this is a ring around the sun. If there's that little out there, and in fact, there's so little out there. Here's the thing that most people don't realize that you might be scared of to think about. There's another asteroid belt that goes right in the pathway of Earth. The Apollo asteroid belt. I think that's how it's called. I don't know.
Oh, the Apollo asteroids? Because, there's actually lots of asteroids that are what we call near-Earth asteroids.
Yeah, and all of them are in that asteroid belt. If you look at, like, a map of this asteroid belt, it goes right in the pathway of Earth. Mm-hmm. We're not hit by it.
Yeah.
I mean, we are occasionally, but
Earth is basically a tiny speck
right
in the equivalent of
the
a
asteroid.
football field.
Yeah, like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs probably has been orbiting the sun since the time of the beginning of the solar system.
Well, that's how all asteroids are.
Right, exactly. Like, it was formed at a certain time, orbiting around since the time... What's going on? I'm gonna silence my phone here. Okay. I swear I'm not usually this popular. I swear. I would be bragging if I was. Mute. There we go. What was I saying? Alright, the asteroid that hit the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period has been probably orbiting the sun since the formation of the solar system. There'd be no reason for it to be formed. If it's 4 billion years old, that's at least 3.9 billion years of this asteroid going around the sun, probably at least once a year. Maybe less. Maybe more. I don't know. Who knows? But boys, it had plenty of chances to hit the Earth, and it didn't until that point because there's just so much room.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, and since there's so much room, you don't really need to move an asteroid that much in order for it to...
Right, like a lot of people are like, oh, we could blow it up. No, why not just redirect it? It's so much easier.
Now, redirect does require more time.
Right, but we usually have time to see it.
Yeah. That's another thing about space that this one site I go to talks about very heavily. There's no such thing as stealth in space. Sure, you have your big, invisible Romulan thing.
Right. I don't know what that is, but...
Yeah. It's some kind of spaceship, anyway.
Oh, it's from Star Trek, Romulans.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not really a Trekkie either. I feel really bad nerd that I'm not really a Star Trek fan or a Star Wars fan. You're more forgiving about it because you're more of a science nerd. You like nerdy things in terms of fiction too, but you're definitely more of a science nerd as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not really that either, so what kind of nerd am I?
You're an English nerd.
I am an English nerd. You mean that is, I am whom an English nerd? No, that doesn't work. I roll. There we go. All right.
And great big sigh. But yeah. There's a lot of space in space.
Yes. And there is no stealth, like you said.
You have to get rid of your heat, and, well, heat's really visible. Technically say the space is 3 degrees Kelvin, which is, you could call that cold, but that's gone beyond cold, and that's more of, you're seeing microwaves. It has dropped out of the infrared spectrum into the microwave. 0
Kelvin is the coldest you can possibly get. That's absolute zero. Absolute zero, which is... about negative 400-something degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, very, very cold.
Yeah. It can get way hotter than that on the other end. It can get like millions upon millions of degrees hot. So I think it's kind of interesting. There's no limit in terms of how hot things get. But of course, that means that because heat is a trackable sort of thing, while cold is not. Cold is just the absence of heat. So when it says absolute zero, that means there's just no heat.
And since you have to maintain a comfortable temperature inside your spacecraft, otherwise, well, it's called a human popsicle.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, you would have to... your ship has to emit some sort of heat. Heck, space probes emit enough heat. And it's fairly easy to scan the sky for infrared and radar radar signatures. I mean, that's how we spot near-Earth asteroids is radar and infrared heat.
Okay, so here's a question I have. There's probably a really easy answer to this that I'm missing. How come the night sky isn't just completely bright? Like, how does light decay? Like, because everywhere you point, there's a star. Mm-hmm. And I know that sometimes the farther away, they get dimmer. Why is that?
Well, it's because a lot of objects that don't emit light, because most of the light we see in the night sky is objects directly creating light, like stars.
Right, but space is so big and there's so much galaxies out there that there will always be a star at every little pixel.
Yeah.
So why isn't the sky
It's called the inverse square law. It's this idea of stars emit light in a spherical pattern.
Right.
The further you get away, the less that's actually going to hit you.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
So basically, if you're a short distance away, you're going to have you're going to say, let's say 25% of the light hitting you. You pull away, it drops to maybe 5%,
right,
1%, 0.1%, and just generally gets smaller.
So it might still be there, but because the point of it where it gives this is so faint, it might as well just not be there. And eventually,
but that's with things that emit light,
right?
Things that don't emit light, like
the moon,
asteroids, and such like that.
Well, the moon is
also,
just go on.
Because they don't reflect light perfectly.
Like the moon reflects light so well. That's why it seems so bright, even though it emits no light.
And it's really, really close,
right?
Comparatively.
Even though, again, it's also really far if you think about it. Like, you can fit all the other planets in the solar system in between the Earth and the Moon.
I don't know about that.
You can, actually. I've seen it. In fact, you can even fit Pluto in there, too, if you want, because even though it's not technically a planet anymore.
The distance is that big, yeah.
Yeah. It's 250,000 miles. It takes light 2 seconds to get there. Like, and light's the fastest thing in the universe. So Alright, listeners, if you hear a difference in audio quality here, it's because we actually took a bit of a break to try and silence these damn dogs.
Bark.
Yep, sorry about that for the last 5 minutes or so and sporadically throughout the rest of it. So, what were you talking about?
Yeah. Just a kind of a back note. The inverse square law could be written for all those who know math. I know some people don't have a hard time with math.
I have no idea what math is.
1 over x squared. So if you were to calculate how much it decreases, it's an exponential decrease the further away you go. And another thing, a lot of things in space, like a lot of the objects that don't directly produce their own light, are actually really dark. You know that they often show asteroids as these big, darkish things. Well, no way, you're not going to be able to detect them with a telescope.
Right.
I mean, that is something that has been brought up. The way you do spot them, however, is with radar and with infrared, especially in infrared, because they absorb the light from the sun, and due to thermodynamics and all sorts of stuff, they emit light in infrared. Mm-hmm. So if you were to take a look at the night sky in infrared, over several hours, you'd see numberless little dots of heat out there that are all of the asteroids and all of the objects.
Well,
that's why we have to use the entire spectrum to see its night sky.
Like a very few of the space pictures you see are actual, just true photographs. Like even like the nebula, I remember being really disappointed when finding out that most nebula are not colorful. Like none of them are. Like that's just the way we view it because of chemical compositions. Like that's what we show. It's like more like
kind
a
of
graph,
a false color image.
Yeah, it's more like just a graph to see what chemicals are in what part of the other. They're actually just white, this gray and white and other stuff. And I'm like, oh, but they're so pretty.
They are really pretty.
All right, well, we've talked a lot about the science here, and I'm sure we got more to talk about here as well. But one thing I want to mention, just before people forget that this is in fact a writing podcast and not an astronomy podcast, like the point of what we're doing with this is if you want to do, the point of this is if you want to do like a hard sci-fi, this is stuff like you got to keep in mind, because hard sci-fi relishes in this kind of stuff. Yeah,
like I said, do lots and lots of research.
That's the main thing. All right, so what was your next point? You said
a lot of sci-fi. Now this is going to be a little out of my zone of knowledge.
That's okay.
But biology, a lot of times they try and do engineering with genetic code and basically just kind of modifying things bodily.
I'm guilty of this.
Yeah.
The mutants in my book.
Yeah. Though honestly, yours are probably one of the least bad I've seen.
Really? The ones that shoot lightning and have four jaws that spew fire?
Yeah. Because they were raised instead of them just randomly mutating out of normal dinosaurs.
Oh, you're talking about like some sort of natural phenomenon of like, well, not quote unquote natural, of like some sort of radioactive thing caused this one thing to get,
and suddenly expands in size ridiculously huge, and it's like, where is it getting all of this mass?
It's true. Like mine are grown. Like Olajex, the scientist, specifically engineers them in that way, which is a whole nother thing.
Considering how amoral he is, I would not be surprised if he feeds some of his most disappointing interns to them.
Or he could do that, absolutely. Or what he could also do is if there's a mutant that doesn't look quite as awesome as he would like, he just feeds it to another one of his mutants. I mean, he doesn't really take I've always imagined him. I never really said this in the story, but I've always imagined that someone doesn't take too much pride in his work. He just kind of views them as like just doodles.
He's more for the result rather than this is what I have done.
Right, exactly. He's not like someone who like keeps trinkets of nostalgia or whatever. He's just like, okay, I did this one. What's next?
So kind of to reference to the first sci-fi thing. If he'd have been Frankenstein, if he saw Frankenstein's monster, it works.
Right.
Let's try it again. This one looks ugly. Let's try a pretty one. Destroys the monster. It's like that would make a
pretty
really,
one.
really
You
short
mean
story.
Bride of Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways,
I haven't actually seen that one.
I haven't seen it either. I've only heard of it. I've read the original book a few times for some of my English classes, and yes, it is one of the first sci-fis.
Yeah. Here's
an interesting thing about it, though. It's actually never revealed how he brought it to life in the book. The lightning was purely the movie's invention. Mm-hmm. I mean, they used to talk a little bit about electricity in the book itself, but they don't really go into detail. Because I think it's really cool. This is something you could do, sort of, listeners, for
if you don't understand
hard sci-fi, or if you don't understand, or if it's not a concept we don't know of yet, just don't say what it is.
Yeah.
That way you don't...
Generally, if you just ignore it like that, then it's much better to ignore it rather than try and make
a guess that will probably be wrong.
Or even worse, give it some really crappy technobabble. Which...
like what I did.
Yeah, that's why I'm around. I help you out with that.
Oh, thank you. He patted my knee affectionately there. I don't know if you guys could hear that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Another thing, when you're doing genetic engineering, there's kind of a side note of, will it be inherited or will it not be? I mean, you can genetically modify someone that way. And in fact, the best way to do that, there's actually some really cool science that's being done right now on genetic engineering, CRISPR and all that stuff.
Right.
But the most common way you can actually alter something that's currently living genetically is through viruses. They're called retroviruses. They basically have the DNA you want to put in there with some of the other stuff you need to, and they do their natural thing and they attach and inject.
Yeah, because I've always imagined genetic engineering as more like just someone's at a computer and like sort of editing sort of the bits of code.
Editing chemical code, yeah.
I mean, sort of like it's all those different letters. Just change some around. Like, who knows? I mean, who knows what each one of them means? I guess somebody could figure it out.
I'm not an expert at that, but somehow they have to make the
geneticist.
genetic code itself and then get it inside the cell to modify it.
Yeah, that's true. It's not just that. You still, even if you do edit the code, what does it do then? There's still a living creature there or a dead creature that's not been alive yet. So, what are you editing at first? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've already talked about the fact that be careful. Don't have your creatures suddenly mutate and then increase in size. It's like, unless they're like eating the dirt and somehow super rapidly converting it into mass that they use.
Okay, so let's specify, listeners. Don't do this in hard sci-fi. If you're writing like if you're liking like a schlocky B movie parody sort of thing, this is totally fine. Just in case it
Pulp
seems like
Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like not the movie Pulp Fiction, the one with Samuel L. Jackson and shit. I haven't seen it for what it's worth.
I think I've heard of it, but
I'm trying to think of a famous quote from it. I get on to Matt David for not watching any classic movies. There's so many classic movies I haven't seen. God.
And I'm even worse.
I know John Travolta's in it. Who cares? Let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. What was I?
But yeah, if you're writing a Pulp Fiction idea, you can have all these crazy.
Yeah,
things.
we're just talking about like hard sci-fi, which is the part of the.
And another reason why I think you should write hard-ish sci-fi. There's a sliding scale. Is it actually makes its story more real to us? We're able to relate it
right,
to us.
Or it makes it like, well, Michael Crichton is pretty good at that. Like, but here's something interesting about Jurassic Park, the book, that people don't seem to realize. When he wrote that was entirely conceivable. Bringing dinosaurs to life through that.
You mean inconceivable?
No, it was the people conceivable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The fact that it couldn't work was proven later after people trying to do it. Like, because they didn't realize the whole thing about DNA decaying through the blood of the... Like, they didn't realize that until they looked into it after the book came out. When the book came out, for all we know, it could have happened. And that's a man who's doing his research there.
He also did the Andromeda strain, which is the idea of a biological thing transmitted from somewhere. Basically sent from somewhere, and was proof that there is intelligent life in the galaxy.
But he goes in a lot of detail about how it all works, though, right? In terms of what it does to the body, He also wrote a book. He also wrote Congo, a book about gorillas. They're super intelligent with lasers. That's probably one of his more pulpy ones.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I was bringing that up as a joke. It's a real.
He also wrote Pirate Cove, it was so realistic. It was like, that is very likely to have actually happened. We don't actually know.
I think it's cool. I think, is that everything we want to talk about with hard stuff? Because we're already an hour in. I just wanted to finish this up.
Let me see.
Just like you were touching upon this a little bit, but I don't know. So let's talk about, maybe we can finish it off like this. Why do you think someone should write hard sci-fi? We're talking about like how, why.
Yeah, or kind of the rules to it.
Yeah, like why? What's the benefit to it? Like you said, it makes it seem real, I guess.
It makes it seem real. It makes it seem more connectable. And granted, I will be the first to admit that, sure, if you wrote a book that's super, super hard sci-fi, but your plotting and character is poor, it's not going to be that great. But if you add hard sci-fi, just kind of this relatable thing to it, and the cool thing about science is it is not... is if you can put it a good distance into the future, you have a level of leeway to it.
Well, that's why
there are certain things that you can kind of excuse as being innovations. Now, try not to rewrite the laws of physics. Everyone tends to, the people who know what they're talking, who know about that stuff, tend to get a little testy at that.
Right.
But if you say that they found a way around it, then
there's some sort of science that they figured out then that we haven't yet. I don't know.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. Science is constantly evolving.
As much as cheesy as it is for sci-fi stories to place in the year 3000 or whatever, there's benefits to that to make it like
at year 3000, that's 1,000 years from now, and technological innovations are exponentially increasing. For those of you who don't know, that basically means it's getting faster and faster. Kind of like the inverse square law means it gets
it's like earthquakes.
Much slower.
It's like earthquakes, how they're more powerful. Like as they,
it's not linear, it's exponential.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, logarithmic.
Logarithmic as well. I don't know which one. Who knows? I'm not a math guy. You're a math guy.
Yeah.
I don't know nothing about no math. I'm an English folk, as you can tell by why I'm saying all these double negatives and triple negatives. All right, so
he loves to revel in the fact that he's an English major whom.
I didn't even know. You didn't say what was after.
Who occasionally likes to break the rules for the heck of it.
I feel really bad that I don't know if it's who or whom there. Who occasionally... No, I think it might be whom. Because you're referring to me. I'm the subject. Yeah, just trust me. He's shrugging.
I'm shrugging. I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm giving a blank look. Okay. Say whatever you want. Say whatever you want.
Well, thank you for telling us all about this hard sci-fi thing.
Yeah, no problem.
So yeah, so this is good timing too. Like as a completely non-hard sci-fi comes out this week, Last Jedi, which, as you know, we and I are totally going to see on opening night, right? Yeah, I've converted him. I've converted him to the dark side, or as he said, he's seen the light.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I don't even dislike Star Wars. I just was indifferent. I disliked Force Awakens.
Yeah, I think it'd be more accurate. I just really like him. We hate Force Awakens.
I just
call
hate
us bad nerds, but
you know what? People are turning on it. Like,
yeah.
and that's what I'm seeing. The reactions to Last Jedi are coming out now, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I laughed, I cried, I screamed, like goosebumps! It's the best one since Empire." I'm like, that's what they've all said, and then 5 minutes later, people are like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I feel like, and this is probably a controversial statement, and I've said this to you earlier. I think Star Wars is 80% hype.
Yeah.
Like 80 to 90% hype. And that's
actually, how about you add in about a 20 to 20?
Okay, fine. 70% hype. Okay, 20% nostalgia. Yeah, but like, there's still some genuine stuff, good stuff to like. I did like Rogue One. It wasn't as good as some of the other ones I've liked, but it's definitely better than Force Awakens, in my opinion. Yes. I know people think the exact opposite. They're two very different movies. But so I'm not.
But honestly, my main argument is Rey is a borderline Mary Sue. It shows
borderline. You should listen to episode 12 of the Writ, where it's Mary Sue's and how to avoid those.
Yeah, her name shows up on the Wikipedia Mary Sue page, and
it does?
Still on there.
Oh my gosh, I have to go look this up.
Yeah. And that is not because she's a woman. Okay,
no,
there can be plenty of women characters who are strong and not be Mary Sue's.
Exactly, like Wonder Woman, and then also in another Star Wars example, that new one from Rogue One. She's not Mary Sue.
Yeah,
she's very capable. She just gets the job done, but she's totally not a Mary Sue. So stop saying it's because she's a female character that we say that. And Luke also is not a Mary Sue. He works and he needs help.
I don't think he did any lightsaber fighting in the first episode.
He didn't.
Second episode, that was post much training from Yoda,
and he still
got his butt kicked.
Yeah, and it
wasn't until the third one that he actually won.
And even then, he only won out of anger. Remember?
Yeah, turning to the dark side, not good.
But then he stopped, and he was more powerful for him to pull his lightsaber back. Yeah. And they'd be like, "Never, I'll never join the dark side." Will he join the dark side in Last Jedi? Who cares? Who cares? I
doubt it.
I'm never gonna see Last Jedi. Like, I was too bummed out by
me. I'm personally putting my money on the fact that Luke dies.
Yeah, that'd be really ironic that both Luke and Han die, but the only actor of the three of them that's dead is Carrie Fisher.
I'm also thinking she's gonna die as well.
No. I mean, surely she must, because how else would you write her out?
Yeah,
that's gonna be interesting what they see. I mean, that's the only part I care about episode 9, because it's J.J. Abrams again.
Yeah. Though honestly, I think you ruined me on Force Awakens.
Yeah, you I remember you saw it, you're like, oh, it was fine, it was good.
Well, no. I remember. And then the big twist that everyone was so shocked about was Han was dying, and I'm like, no, he's told me he's only one Star Wars episode, only one more movie.
Yeah,
because he hated it. He hated it from episode freaking 4.
Well, to be fair, it's not that, I don't know if he hated it. I think he was just sick of it. Like, everyone just kept pestering him about it.
No, he hated it.
That makes sense.
He hated it.
Not as much as Al Guinness, I don't think. But
who's Al?
He was Obi-Wan, the original Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
He really hated it, which is amazing because he got super rich from it. Because he got a percentage of the box office.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Money is not everything.
Alas. Anyways, enough about Star Wars, shall we?
Another Star Wars rant, and it's on recording.
And it's for a hard sci-fi episode. Okay,
True.
We've got a lot of feelings about it. Most of them not good, but
none of them positive.
You guys all enjoy Last Jedi. We're not trying to say don't enjoy it. We're not
enjoy it, and if you have to, enjoy it while throwing tomatoes.
Yeah, well, or genuinely love it. It's your life. It's your taste. We're not trying to convince you otherwise. Anyways. So, this is the normal part of the show where we're like, where can people get a hold of us? Now, it's different. I'm assuming you probably don't feel comfortable, like, putting your own email address in or whatever. Or do you? I don't know.
I don't care.
Okay. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, if you have any questions more about hard sci-fi, and I will be doing, and you can ask me questions I can do research on, AlanTitan1@msn.com.
Yes. Or you could also message me, or my co-host Matt David, and ask him where the hell he was this month at mattd@matthewdonaldcreator.com. You can use your own email system or the one on my website, which is matthewdonaldcreator.com. I'm not hearing any dogs. We did it.
We did it.
Good
Yay.
work. Anyways, so you can also follow me at my professional Facebook accounts at Matthew Donald Creator, or my Twitter, which is at Matthew Donald 64. Why 64?
Because you like the Nintendo 64?
That's the joke everyone makes. I don't even know why originally. I think it might have been back in the day. Like, I came up with it years upon years ago. I don't know. I think I was just a round person, and it's a round number? I usually write these... I don't know.
Just say you chose it and you have
I'm a writer, guys! I don't... Chose it what?
Just say that you came up with it, you have no idea what it is now.
Well... But I always have to do a joke every episode of what it is. Anyways, who cares? He's rolling his eyes. It's not really rolling his eyes now. He's more like, looking at me like really?
It's like,
come on. You
kind of a poor episode for jokes, considering it was all us lecturing.
It was poor for you. I think I was a riot this episode. I was a rambunctious riot with the vivacity of a vivid... I'm Matt Donald!
I'm Alan Brooks.
And this was another episode of The Writ. Matt David should be back next time.
Alright.
Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
The